All right, as I continue and hopefully work towards completing my shape exercise, I'm going to open two different files. So I'm going to open my Photoshop file, which has my vector shapes, and then also has a layer on top that's only a 25% opacity of the original. And I've locked that layer so I can't accidentally do anything to it other than just turn it off and on. I also have a 100% opacity full copy of that reference photo in the background, but it doesn't matter now because it's all covered. I've covered every part of the frame. But because there are subtleties now that I might want to address in my shapes, maybe add some more shapes that I might not be able to tell from just this very subtle overlay of the Paramount copyright image here. Then the other thing I'm going to open up is just my reference image that I pulled from online. And instead of opening it in Photoshop, I'm just going to double click it to open it in Preview. So Preview is the other imaging raster program we have in Photoshop or in our doc. And it comes in really handy for just quick viewing and even for easy image alteration for JPEGs before we put them online. And we'll look at some of those advantages with our first assignment. So now I'm going to organize my screen a little bit differently. I'm going to move Photoshop so I can see everything, but I have a little bit more space off to the side. Then I'm going to move my reference over here. So I can see if I squint and I see that there's something here that's still catching my eye that I don't really see here, I know what changes to make. And sure enough, I think I want to add another set of ellipses. And I can do that a few ways. In fact, I have this kind of crazy ellipse already. So the easiest way, instead of trying to redo something like that, is to just hit Command J, which is to duplicate. And it will create that exact same shape in the exact same place, but it's on a new layer now. And you can see how when you duplicate, it copies the layer name and just puts copy next to it. So now I'll move that up. I can change the color. And I can't steal a color from a preview image. It has to be within Photoshop to be able to steal the color. But that's why I like having these swatches available. It gives me very common printable colors. And then I'll just move it behind. And now I'll change the shape with Command T and with warp. And push it up where it needs to go up. Push it down where it needs to go down. Excuse me. And it's just a very gentle curve. Now to paint this by hand with shapes, you would use French curves. So the computer is a wonderful tool that allows you that really, really gentle curving control. Now I need to move this layer down below, and I can drag and drop it down below these other layers, but maybe I'm not sure how far it needs to go. So this is a nice shortcut for moving layers up or down. You hold down Command, and then you do right bracket, which are right below the plus and minus keys that we use for zooming in and out. Command right bracket will move the layer up. Command left bracket will move the layer down. So I'll often do that until it's situated right where I want it. And then I know where I've gone too far. Okay, next, I'm now going to turn off this top layer. Now I'm going to add one more thing I'm missing before I do. But soon I'll turn off that top layer so I can use the layer select option again. Just quickly, I'm going to use the rounded rectangle tool and just fill in this space for the scarf. I want a little darker than that. That looks good. And then I can do Command T. I can rotate it just slightly so it looks more handmade, like that film still, and then hit return. Okay. And if I want to do more, I might cut out the shapes from the hair. But before I can select the hair, I have to turn that off, and I have to turn on Auto Select Layer to select this rectangle shape. And basically, instead of trying to manipulate and change that rectangle shape by adding a lot of anchor points, which actually maybe I will show you how to do that, I could also just paint it with the background. And so I could fill in with yellow triangles to cut into the positive shape. But I'll show you how we can add anchor points to this rectangle. So its color is good. I've selected it. Now I'm going to move to a new tool, which is called the pen tool. But I'm going to not just use the regular pen tool, I'm going to add anchor point tool. Turn that guiding layer back on. And now I'm going to add anchor points wherever I need to move it. And I can customize shapes this way. But you have to add a lot of anchor points for something like this. And then move them down. And I'm still trying to keep it pretty simple. Oops. So this is something you can play with, you're not required to, but it will make it a little bit more similar to Illustrator once we get in there. So I'll zoom in, show you the basics of what I'm doing. So once I've created an anchor point, you'll see that the tool changes from being a pen tool that adds an anchor point to being what I call a small selection tool, a white arrow instead of a black arrow. And that just allows you to drag the anchors different places to make the shapes you want. So if I add one, then I can move it, and I can kind of fill up the space a little bit more. But it will always balance it with the other shapes that are there. I'm not trying to create more than I need. So if I want this triangle here, I need to create an anchor point there and an anchor point in the middle, and then drag the one in the middle down. And if I want this to be a little taller, I can make it taller. Then I need to add an anchor point there, there, and in the middle, so I can drag that down. And if you drag the anchor point, it goes straight, but if you drag the handles to the anchor point, it will make curves. And those are called Bezier curves, and we'll learn a lot more about those when we start playing with Illustrator for real in the second half of the class. But you'll get a sense of all the opportunities here. And it's my preferred way of using Bezier curves, using the pen tool, using Illustrator, is to start with something simple and then to refine it. So to me, it's much easier to start with a simple rectangle and then make it into this really complicated shape, should you want to, by adding anchor points and moving them around. And then you have complete control over the whole thing, versus trying to draw a very complex shape just with the pen tool right out of the gate. Now, just like I can add anchor points, I can delete them with the delete anchor point tool. So if I feel like I have a few too many, I can try getting rid of some, seeing what that does. It will usually do weird things. All right. Let's see how that looks. So that's the only kind of really odd shape in there, but it gets the attention it needs. He has a little ear. I might show that with just a really simple ellipse. Similar shape, similar color. Notice that your swatches will show you recent colors as well up here. So you have that ability. And then, of course, the move tool. Tuck it in for you. All right, so now I'm going to turn off this top layer. And then I can have auto select turned on, and I can try moving these shapes of color around, right? I can move the hair up above. And if I like that, maybe I want to make this shape even a little bit longer by adding anchor points to the bottom now and having this kind of make up the shadow on his head just slightly. So if I want a perfect curve there, this is a good instance where I would delete the anchor point. And then I would mess with these curves to get that curve to be exactly what I want. And I have the curve on the top I can play with, or the curve on the bottom. The bottom curve is going to give me what I want. Then I might decide, okay, I need another shape this color. Overlap. Maybe just something like this. And I'm going to move it up with Command right bracket. And then use the arrow keys and the move tool, or just the move tool itself, to kind of move it into its place. To represent kind of the spine and the core shadow there. And then I need one more shape here. In fact, I'm going to cheat here, but this, you're allowed because it's a shape tool. I'm going to go to the custom shape tool under the shapes, and then you have under the options all of these nice selections that you can alter from. I actually really like this blob shape. It's really easy to manipulate into what you want with transform. And it just saves you a lot of effort. So I can use it there. And then there's actually a grass shape, which is very clip arty. But if you use it correctly, it might be just what I need for right by his bottom there. And of course you can transform that. And then I can make a duplicate of that and use it for the fox as well. Maybe warp it just a little bit so it doesn't, or flip it so it doesn't feel so much like just a copy. And I suggest kind of warping and customizing every shape so you can really have ownership of it. One more copy here just for the edge. No, I don't like that. Delete. All right, so it's all about keeping it simple, keeping it clear, and so when you squint at it, it matches. All right, I'm going to save my work because that will do the job. And that's basically it. I might darken some colors slightly. And then one last thing I can do is if I want to fill something up with something other than a solid color, I can double click on it and I can do a gradient overlay. Woohoo. And this time I'm going to make the colors just a straight linear gradation. So you have all these settings, and I'm going to choose the colors from my palette. So I can go from a kind of a tannish yellow there's not a lot of yellows in the palette here. So I can go from the millions of colors here. All the way to something not quite pure white, but very close.